All right, Shabbos like, ooh, wow, that is powerful. All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good Tvach. Hopefully everyone had a beautiful, uplifting, and incredible Shabbos, and great Zuchos Baruch Hashem to begin a new week of Limud together. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. Oh, thank you, Rishon. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Adar. Our Teri Czinn for dedicating all the Shum Joshos this month in memory of Teri's father, Harry Kahn, Tzvi Hirsh ben Yosef HaKohen. Paul and Kathy Pollack for dedicating all the Shum Joshos this month in memory of Paul's grandparents, Zechariah ben Zechariah and Dinah bas Pesach. To thank our Week of Learning sponsors, our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Gobbie and Shayna Cohn, for dedicating the commemoration of the yahrzeit of Alvin, Cohn, Avrohom ben Rabbi Yosef HaKohen, and Kahn, Zager, in memory of Sammy Kahan, Shlomo ben Reb Dovid, HaCohane, Zechariah. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah, and the families a nechama. With that, let us begin. Today's daf is Nun Hey 55, and we are actually picking up mamish at the top line of 55a. So if you remember again, the Mishnah that we did in yesterday's daf, on Nundal and Nundal, went on to Nundal and base, spoke about the different tumah exposures which do not require a Nazir to start all over again. Right? Remember again, in the Mishnah before, we spoke about all the different tumah exposures which require require a Nazir to go ahead and restart his neder naziris. First of all, shave, bring karbanos, and restart. Here, this Mishnah is a list of tumahs, types of tumah, where even if there is an exposure, it does not require the Nazir to go ahead and start all over again. Good. One of the things that the Mishnah listed was Eretz Ha'amim. If halacha l'maisa, a Nazir goes out of Eretz Yisrael and he ventures into one of the foreign lands. Foreign definition of Eretz Ha'amim is anywhere outside of Eretz Yisrael. So by definition, again, there's tumah on Eretz Ha'amim. That will say, so if a Nazir were to go outside of Eretz Yisrael and to go into one of the lands, he would not have to go ahead and restart his neder naziros. Now, why is that? So this one is a little bit easier because this is a rabbinic tumah. So remember again, because it's a rabbinic tumah, there is no such thing as the tumah of Eretz Ha'amim mid-da'oraisa. There's only the tumah ultimately midrabbanan. Now we'll say, what is the source of that rabbinic tumah for Eretz Ha'amim? So this is what we saw at the end of yesterday's daf. This is a fundamental machlokas. What's the machlokas? Is it mishum gusha or mishum avira? Mishum gusha literally means because of the land. Meaning what? There is a legitimate concern of unmarked graves. That's it. And therefore, again, in the Amim, the nations of the world, we're not as makbid. Remember, I will say, we Klal Yisrael, we're careful to mark graves. Why? Kahuna, right? Kahuna, and also Tara for the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, for us, Tum and Tara, it sounds like a strange statement when I say for us, Tum and Tara plays a major role in our daily lives. So the truth is, again, it actually felt that way over the last couple of weeks, right, in Daf Yomi. Right? But Lamais, again, with the Beis HaMikdash, so ultimately Tumah and Tara is bread and butter, right? It's bread and butter. Everything is governed by Tumah and Tara. So therefore, again, we're makbid to mark graves in the Eretz Ha'amim. So that's Mishum Gusha. Other possibility was Mishum Aviro, which means what? The air itself is Matame. And I will say, what does that mean? So in general, what that would mean was, Chazal did not want Jews leaving Eretz Yisrael. They didn't want Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, what's the best way to get a Jew not to leave Eretz Yisrael? Say that you know what the air is coming. The air itself. In other words, just going outside of Eretz Yisrael, by definition, confers upon one a certain level of tumah. I was thinking about this. It's interesting. Like, hashkafically, what's the difference between avira and gusha? So I'll say, if you think about it like this, if this is the way Chazal are expressing to us, that there's a danger in living outside of Eretz Yisrael. There's a danger. We're not used to thinking this way because we're 2,000 years into diaspora. But if you think about it for just a moment, there's a danger, Chazal were telling us, for the Jew to live outside of Eretz Yisrael. So the Shayna is, what's the danger? Is it Mishum Gusha or Mishum Avira? Gusha means Gashmius, the earth. Maybe the danger of being a diaspora Jew is the lure of material pleasure and wealth. Because the truth is, Baruch Hashem, there's plenty of it. So maybe that's the concern of living outside Eretz Yisrael, Mishum Gusha. Other possibility is Mishum Avira. Mishum Avira means what I will say. that the danger of living outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's the avir. Avira is ruchnius. That maybe it's the spiritual impact of living outside of the land of Israel, of being bombarded with so many influences and so many isms and so many movements that are simply contrary to what and who we are, to what we believe. So you see in this again, not just a halachic debate, but a hashkafic debate as well as to the danger of chutz la'aretz. Gusha, is it gashmius, materialism, or avira, ultimately again, is it the impact it has on our ruchnius? So the Gemara says, top of Munei, lema ketanoi. So the truth is, this is a machlokes tanoi. So machlokes on the house rabbi say, hanichnas la'aretz, we've actually seen this case a number of times before. Hanichnas la'aretz ha'amim b'shida tevel migdal. We'll say, watch this. A guy leaves Eretz Yisrael, enters into the lands of the nations of the world, and he's sitting in a shida, teva, or migdal, in a carriage, a trunk, or a chest. Okay, don't ask why. That's where he is. Right? So he's inside, I will say, he's inside a container. He's inside a container. I will say, now what's the halacha? So we'll say, so now if you think about it, what's the imagery over here? What's the imagery? He is going ahead and he's in a sealed container, right? And he is going through Eretz Ha'amim. So I will say, so now the Shayla is, what's going to be the impact of that trip through Eretz Ha'amim on him? Rebbe Matami, Rebbe says he's Tamei. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Matar, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says he's Tar. He's Tar. So Rebbe says, what's the machlokes? My love, Rebbe Savar Mishum Avira. So we'll say, it must be Rebbe who holds that he's Tamei, is because he holds that it's Avira. It's even the airspace of Eretz Ha'amim that is Matami. See, even though this guy has never actually set foot on the ground of chutz la'aretz, the mere fact that he's being transported through the airspace, through the air of chutz la'aretz, is enough to convey him with a certain level of tumah. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Savar, Mishum Gusha. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, on the other hand, who says that he's tahar, says that no. The gzera of Eretz Ha'amim is on what? Gusha. It's on the earth itself. Therefore, both say, in this case, did the guy ever set foot on the ground? No. He's in a container. He's in a sealed container. So the Gemara suggests you see from here that what? That the nature of the tumah of chutz la'aretz is a machlokes tanoim. Rebbe holding that the tumah of chutz la'aretz is even on the avir. That's why even if you go in a sealed container, you're still going to be tamei. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda say no. The tumah of Eretz Ha'amim is on the gusha, is on the land, and therefore, if you are in a sealed container, you will remain tahar. Beautiful. To which the Gemara says, lo. No, incorrect. Kol yama mishum gusha. Everyone actually agrees that the tumah of chutz la'aretz is mishum gusha, is because the actual earth, in other words, they both say that the issue over here is one of unmarked graves, and therefore the concern is that if you walk in chutz la'aretz, you may come to inadvertently walk on an unmarked grave. So what's the machlok? So if that's the case, that everyone holds mishum gusha, so what's the machlok survey? It's fascinating. Mar savar, ohel zrok shmei ohel, umar savar, lo shmei ohel. We'll say this is fascinating. What's the machlokes here? The machlokes here, we'll say, is if it is a movable ohel considered to be an ohel. In other words, we'll say, let's analyze this for just a bit. So what the Gemara is suggesting over here is like this. Everyone agrees that Allah Lamaisa, the challenge with Eretz Ha'amim is gusha, is because of the ground, because of unmarked graves. Okay, fine. So now we're settled on that. I mean, we're not. We're settled on it for 2 minutes. But right for this moment, we're settled on it. So we'll say, so now here's what's interesting. So now let's play this out. Reuven, we'll call him, is going through Eretz Ha'amim in a sealed container. In a sealed container. So Rebbe says he's tamei. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says he's not tamei. So the Gemara says, what's the machlokes? The machlokes is as follows. Is a movable ohel considered to be an ohel? And I will say, now what does that mean? You see, when Reuven is moving over Eretz Ha'amim in a container, the shayla is, does that container act as an ohel that has the ability to block him from becoming tamei? See, I will say, I want to point something out very interesting. We normally think about an ohel, right? When we think about ohel, how do you think about ohel? Right? A house. But I'm saying, what's the context we've learned ohel in? Tumas ohel. Right? Good. In other words, we'll say, the context we've had ohel in is, I'm under the same roof as a mace. That's ohel. Here, the concept is being used a little bit differently. An ohel also represents a barrier. In other words, If I'm in the ohel and the mace is outside the ohel itself could serve as a barrier, chodseitz bifnei hatumah, could prevent me from becoming tamei. So we'll say, so everyone will agree that actually like a solid structure of a regular ohel will go ahead and prevent me from becoming tamei. Here's the shayla. When you have a movable ohel, does a movable ohel have the ability to serve as a barrier in front of tumah? So that's the shayla. So we'll say, let's play this out. So now Ruvain is in a box. Essentially what he's in. Ruvain's in a box. Right? So just conjure up the following scene. Ruvain's in a box. And I will say, by the way, it's actually not like a crazy case. In other words, it's just the case of a guy in a carriage, on a wagon. Right? He's in a wagon, but again, it's not an open wagon, it's an enclosed wagon. So if you can imagine, he's on a wagon. Right? Ruvain's on a wagon. And he's just going through Eretz Ha'amin, right? He goes down, right? He's traveling. And so now the shayla is, what's his status? What's his status? So we'll say, what does it come down to what his status is? Now, because what do we have to be concerned about? Let's play this through. What's our concern? Tumah. Now, why would there be an issue of tumah? He's in a wagon. Right? Because remember, the concern is he's driving over graves. Right? Tumah's mace is Ola Bokas, goes up. So Rabbi saying, now what's our shayla? He's in a wagon. The question just is a mobile ohel considered to be a solid halachic structure, solid enough to serve as a barrier to tumah? That's the machlokes. Therefore, Rebbe, who says that he's tamei, Rebbe holds that an ohel, what we call an ohel zrok, right? Ultimately, again, a movable ohel, it's not called the structure. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, it is not chodseitz bifnei hatumah. Ultimately, again, doesn't work. Rabbi Yosef HaKohen, on the other hand, holds mitar. He holds that halacha l'maisa, ohel zrok, a movable ohel, does in fact have the ability to be chodseitz, to serve as a barrier bifnei tumah. Shabbos say, so in this iteration over here, everyone is agreeing that the gzeira of Eretz Ha'amim is on gusha, is on the ground. The case that the Gemara is bringing up over here, nichnas la'eretz Ha'amim, b'shida, teva, u'migdal, is not a machlokes about the nature of the tumah of Eretz Ha'amim. Rather, what is it a machlokes about? Ohel zrog, shmei ohel, or lav shmei ohel. Is a movable structure considered to be a bona fide structure that it could be chodseitz b'fnei hatumah, serve as a barrier in front of the tumah, or not? That's machlokes. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So it says, the Gemara says as follows. But one second, Vatanya. But I suppose say so. And therefore, in this version, we're saying that according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, ultimately again he holds mitar. Mitar will say means according to Rabbi Yehuda, the wagon is considered to be a proper barrier in front of tumah. So Rabbi Yosef Yehuda holds that ohel zrok shmei ohel, a movable structure, is still considered to be a bona fide structure, so as to be able to create a barrier in front of tumah. So the Gemara says, is that true? Now the Gemara is going to question now the position of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. About time we learned Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Omer teva shimalei kelim is a very interesting case. So let's imagine the following case: you have a teva, a chest that is filled with utensils. Okay, and now what do? V'zarka al pnei hameis. Now we'll say, can you imagine the following situation? You have a mace. You have a mace. You have a chest filled with utensils. What do? You take the chest and you throw it. So where does it go? It passes over the mace. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Bizarka al panei hameis ba'ohel, right? And you go ahead and you could take out ohel. The Hagos Tziyunim takes out the word ohel. It's unnecessary, right? You throw it on top of the mace. So we'll say, so therefore it passes over the mace. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Tmeya. Ultimately, again, now we'll say, when we say tmeya, what's tmeya in here? What's tmeya in here are the kelim, right? The utensils themselves are going to be tamei. However, again, if the chest is at rest, then ultimately again TORAH. Ultimately, the contents will remain tar. And Rabbi say, what do you see from this? The fact that halacha l'maisa, when you take, so let's play it again. What is the teva? In this case, what does the teva represent? An ohel. What is an ohel to? the utensils on the inside, right? So remember again, the teva is the ohel, is the structure, so to speak, which houses the utensils. Now we're taking the ohel, we're throwing it over the mace. What did the Gemara say? What's the halacha? The utensils are tameh. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Ohel zrok lav shmei ohel. That tells you that a movable structure does not have the ability to go ahead and be a barrier in front of tumah. Now, both say, who's quoted as being the source of this ruling? Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. So I would say, now I have a problem. Why? Because we just said before Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a movable ohel is in fact considered to be an ohel, and now we're seeing that it's not considered to be an ohel. So what's going on? So it sends us back to the drawing board. Therefore, it has to be that the interpretation of the machlokes that we just espoused is incorrect. So back to the drawing board. Elo, the kuli alma mishum avira. Okay, let's say 180. So let's say, now we're saying, bless you. Now we're going to say like this. In reality, the tumah of Eretz Ha'amim is in reality mishum avira, is because of the airspace, the air of Eretz Ha'amim. Now, both say now, again, going back for just a moment, if we say that the tumah of Eretz Ha'amim is because of Adar, then ultimately, again, what's the nature? Why did Chazal legislate that tumah? Why did they legislate it? They just didn't want us to go to Chutz La'aretz. That's it. It's not really about unmarked graves. It's just don't go to Chutz La'aretz. We'll say it's a shtickle stinging to read these Gemaras. No, like it hurts a little bit. You know, we it's so important. Every once in a while, we do get a reminder that this is not home. And it's important. It's important. As comfortable, Baruch Hashem, as we are, and as happy as we are, and as successful as we are, and as the incredible Torah infrastructure that we have built up, and Baruch Hashem, as privileged as we are to have a galus like the one we have, it's always important every once in a while to be reminded that this is not where a Jew belongs. It's not where a Jew belongs. A Jew only has one home. That's all. There's only one home, and that home is Eretz Yisrael. And also when I say the home, it's not, yes, I have my favorite hotel that I stay at in Yerushalayim. And that's not it. There's only one home. There's only one home. So it could be, I don't have any imminent plans to get there yet. Okay, let's say, we saw this at Chassidish on Thursday night. Sometimes in life, there are things that I know to be absolutely true, even though I know I'm not going to act on them anytime soon. But in life, it's important to know truths. So truth, Eretz Yisrael is the home for every single Jew. That is a truth. Now, it could be, I'm not acting on that truth anytime soon. That's possible. And again, we all live, it's just like we'll say, right? We all have things. I know that there are things that are broken inside of me. And I know that they're broken. I know that I have to fix it. What else do I know? I'm not fixing it now. I know it sounds strange to say that kind of stuff, but we all have things like that. I'm not fixing it now. I know that it's broken. I'm not fixing it now. People have stuff like that in their house, right? It's been broken for a long time. I know that it's broken. I'm not doing it today. I said I was going to do it. I know I'm not doing it today, right? So there's things like that in the physical house and things like that in the spiritual house. Things that are broken, I'm just telling you, I'm not fixing it today. But at least I know that it's broken. I would say things in life I know that are true, even if I'm not getting around to doing it just yet. So pretty again, it's important to be reminded, this is not home. It's home for now, but it's a temporary home at most. We'll say, Galus, at most, is an Ohel Zrok. Right? At most, it's a movable tent. That's all it is. It's a movable tent. It's not even an Ohel Kavah, it's not even an Ohel Kavua. It's an Ohel Zrok. It's good ultimately, again, for now, but we have to recognize that at the end of the day, it's not where we should be. And then the Gemara says as follows, Ella, the Kuli Alma Mishum Avira. Rabbi say ultimately, again, the Gemara is doing a 180, and in reality, the reason why Chazal legislated about Chutz La'aretz is because of Avira, ultimately because of the airspace. So we'll say, now watch this. So let's go back for just a moment. What we're trying to figure out is the case on the top of Nun Hey. So let's go back for just a second. So remember, Ruvain is entering into Eretz Ha'amim in a sealed box, right, in a wagon or whatever trunk. So we'll say, so now, Rebbe says he's Tameh. Rabbi Yehuda says he's not Tameh, right? Or say he's Tar. So what's the machlokes? So we'll say, so now what we're saying is everyone agrees it's the Avir, it's the airspace. So the Gemara says, now watch this. Umar savar kivman de lo shchicha lo gazru beirabanan. Umar savar afagav de lo shchicha gazru beirabanan. So we'll say, here's the interesting machlokes. The interesting machlokes we'll say is like this. Chazal in general, when they went ahead and they made a takana to govern normal circumstances. In life, you have what's called a milsa de lo shchicha. Milsa de lo shchicha means an uncommon occurrence. Whenever you have an uncommon occurrence, in general, we say that Chazal's legislation did not extend to such a case. So if I was to suggest, coming into Chutz La'aretz in a box, in a sealed box, is an uncommon occurrence. So therefore again, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, who says that you're tar, he says Chazal just didn't legislate in this case. So because they didn't legislate in this case, you're going to be tar. Versus again, Rabbi, who says that you're tamei, will hold no. Chazal extended their legislation in all cases, and therefore even in this case, where you come in a box, you're still going to become tamei. Okay, incredible. So I will say the most about Tanya we learned hanichnas. Hanichnas. Good. We'll say this price is coming to support what we just said. Hanichnas la'eretz ha'amim b'shida table migdal tar. If a person comes into eretz ha'amim, ultimately again in the carriage, in the trunk, or in the chest, ultimately you're going to be tar. Yet interestingly enough, bikaron, in a wagon, so we'll say, here's the difference. See, I use the wagon as an example. The reason why these cases of shida, table, and migdal are not common examples is because why? They're totally sealed. Right? A wagon, at least the way Chazal talk about a wagon, ultimately is an open wagon. An open wagon. So if a person comes into Eretz Ha'amim, B'shida table migdal, you're going to be tar. B'karon, u'b'sfina, u'b'iskarta tamei. But if you come in a wagon, you come in a boat, or you come in a masted ship, ultimately again you're going to be tamei. Now I will say, now why the distinction? Because shida, table, migdal are uncommon cases. Because they're uncommon cases, and they also happen to be sealed up, therefore Chazal were not gozer tumah in those cases. But in the common cases, like in a wagon, a boat, a ship, those are common cases. They're also open air cases, and therefore you will be tamei. So we'll say, in this stage of the Gemara is assuming that the tumah of Eretz Ha'amim is a tumah of avir, and not a tumah of gusha. So as soon as you are exposed to ultimately the airspace of Eretz Ha'amim, ultimately again you are going to become tamei. The also another possibility is very interesting. Hacha shema yotzi rosho verubo l'shama pligi. So it's actually very interesting. It could also be that the machlokes between Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi is whether or not, even in these cases of a sealed structure or a sealed ohel, do we have to be concerned that you will extend your head and the majority of your body outside of the box? Perhaps that's the machlokes over here as well. Ultimately, Rabbi Yosef says that if a person who goes ahead and goes into Eretz Ha'amim, Chutz La'aretz, in a shida table migdal, tar, you'll be tar, ad shi yotzi l'sham rosha o rubo. You'll become tar, ultimately again, until you extend your head and the majority of your body. So let's say just another version of machlokes. So let's say, bottom line, here's what we know. Right, here's what we know. We know, just working backwards, let's go with facts. Fact, if a Nazir ventures into Eretz Ha'amim, what's the impact of that entry into Eretz Ha'amim on his Nazir? What's the impact? So minimal. Minimal meaning what? So ultimately, again, it does not go ahead and disrupt his Nazirus. Now again, we're going to see, Rabbi say, it is a bit disruptive in that, again, there's some Torah process that will be necessary, but the point over here is it does not cause him to end his Neder Nazirus and have to restart everything all over again. So we'll say that's ultimately, again, that's fact. Next, what is the nature of the Gzera of Eretz Ha'amim? So Rabbi say it's important to understand it's a rabbinic tumah. But what machlokes are we left with? The reason for that rabbinic tumah. Is it mishum gusha? Is it mishum avira? Is it because of unmarked graves? Right? Unmarked graves. Literally, again, we're concerned. You walk into Eretz Ha'amim, you could be stepping on a grave. Or ultimately, again, is it mishum avira? Just a general airspace issue. Chazal did not want you going into Chutz La'aretz. So we'll say the nafkamina between those two approaches. The nafkamina would be you enter into Eretz Hamim in a sealed structure. Ultimately, if it's gusha, then halacha l'maaseh you're tahor. If it's avira, you could be tamei. So we'll say the other machlokes. Now again, so what's the resolution? That really remains unresolved. In other words, that machlokes still stands about the nature of the tumah of Eretz Hamim. We'll circle back about that in Eretz Hashem in a little bit, but that machlokes is there. The other machlokes we're introduced to, which is a very interesting machlokes, is about oil zrok, a movable structure. Does a movable structure have the ability to act as a tumah interposition, as a tumah barrier? So I'll say that in and of itself is a machlokes as well, about oil zrok, shmei oil, lo shmei oil. So two major machlokes. Good. Let's go a little bit weiter. Says Gemara, maschil umona. So I'll say, if you remember again, the next piece of the Mishnah was as follows. Was talking about a Nazir who contracts tsaras. And what happens in a situation like this if the Nazir contracts tsaras? So the Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, the lashon of the Mishnah was, okay, so just to talk about this just a moment. There are two parts that we talk about over here. There's what we call bimei sipuro and bimei gamro. So bimei gamro, we'll say, are the days that is actually tamei. In other words, the days of what we'll call active tsaras. Bimei sipuro, the days of his counting, talk about the 7-day purification process, right? Remember again in the Tzorah, undergoes 2 shavings, one on day 1, one on day 7. So you have those days, the Yemei Sipur, the counting days, and Yemei Gomro, which are the days that he's actually tamei. So the Mishnah taught us that halacha l'maisa, those days, right? Those days do not count towards his neder nezirus, but neither do they what? Interrupt. Shabbos say essentially what the Mishnah seems to be saying is, if you're a Nazir, and you contract tsaras, essentially what happens? What happens to your neder nezirus? Paused. Essentially it's paused. It's paused. Right? So in other words, again, the days will not count, but you don't lose. So we hit the pause button until you're finished with your tsaras. Then again, unpause. Is that the right thing? Unpause. Resume. Thank you. Resume, right? Pause, and then you resume your neder nezirus. Good. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chisda, Lo shor ela b'nezirus mu'etas. Shabbos is actually quite interesting. So Rav Chisda said, ultimately, again, this idea that the days of what we'll call active tumah, right? The days of active tumah of saras, and the days of counting, the days of purification, that those days don't count towards your neder nezirus, only refers to what? What we call a Nazirus Mu'etas. Now, what's the definition of a Nazirus Mu'etas? 30 days. 30 days. Aval, Benazirus Meruba, Mislak Nami Salakle. Both say, this is fascinating. Chisda statement is incredible. But Chisda says, when do we say that the days of Tumah, both say, the Gemara calls days of Tumah, Yemei Gomro. Right? That's when you're literally again an active Mitzorah. When do we say that the days of your Tumah, and the days of your counting, you may see where days of counting is the days of TORAH, the actual purification process. When do we say that those days don't count towards your neder nezirus? That's only nezirus mu'etas, a 30-day nezirus. But if you are observing a longer term of nezirus, those days could actually even count towards your neder nezirus. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. But we'll say, fine, let's go back there. So Gemara says, Avai, Maser Rav Sharvia. So Rav Sharvia says, one second. I'm not sure that this is correct. So we'll say, so by the way, if you take a quick look at the Rush for just a moment, so the Rush says, Ela benazir mu'atas, shenazir lamid yom v'nistara, mishum kol she'yisra b'misaraso tzarech legalech l'tzaraso, v'achra osa taglachas, tzarech linog niziros ad she'isaro ro'i l'taglachas, de'ein gidul se'er pachos milamed yom. So here's what's interesting. So remember again, Rav Chisda is going to say like this. The Mishnah taught me a rule. What was the rule? The rule is that if a Nazir becomes a Mitzorah, so first of all, we hit the pause button on the Nazirus, and the days of Saras do not deconstruct the Nazirus, but they also don't count towards the Nazirus. Rav Chisda comes along and qualifies this rule. He says, when is that true? Only if it's a short 30-day Nazirus. But if it's longer than 30 days, then the days of Tumah and the days of counting can actually count towards Nazirus as well. This comes on Rav Sharvia, Master Rav Sharvia, How could that be? Maschil umona miyad ve'ein mevatel b'hanas hakoldmin. So remember, Rav Shaivi is quoting the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? If a Nazir who becomes a Metzora, when he finishes his saras, he goes ahead and maschil umona miyad, he begins to write the count of his Nazirus immediately afterwards. Ve'ein mevatel b'hanas hakoldmin. And the Nazirus in no way negates the day is counted up until that point. So Rav Shaivi says, B'mai, what's the case of the Mishnah? Ilema b'nezirus mo'atas. If you're talking about a 30-day nezirus, kabay gidol seir. Here's what I will say. Here's the problem. It can't be that the Mishnah is talking about a 30-day nezirus. Why I will say, let's play this out for just a moment. Let's play this out. Right? Reuven becomes a Nazir. Right? Decides to take on Nazir Nazir. So we'll say, what happens? Play this out. 10 days in, he becomes a Metzora. Okay. So we'll say, let's assume for a moment, he has saras for a week. Then he has another week of Tumah. So what does the Mishnah say? Hit the pause button. 2 weeks are done. So we'll say, now what does the Mishnah say? He can resume his Nazirus. So we'll say, when is the Nazirus going to be over? Right? How many more days does he have on his Nazirus? 20. So is his Nazirus going to be over in 20 days? No, why not? We'll say, remember again, in order to conclude a Neder Nazirus, you need a minimum of 30-day hair growth. Part of the concluding process of his Tara for Tzaras is what? Shaving. Which means when he enters into the last leg, the last 20 days of his Neder Nazirus, in other words, there's only 20 days left of his Nazirus, but he needs at least 30 days of hair growth, which by definition means that what? His Nazirus is going to automatically be extended what? Another 10 days. So therefore, again, so Rav Shaivi says, what's the Mishnah's case? It can't be Nazirus Mo'etas, just a 30-day, because that's simply not true. Even though technically he only has 20 days left on his Nazirus term, he's going to have to observe at least another 30 because he needs the hair growth. Ella, rather I will say, what? Amud Beis. I will say, tell me it is not the best feeling in the world. Right? To turn the page and you see this, like, I got this. Right? I got this under control. I say, it's going to be a good week. Right? So let's do this. Elalav, Benazirus Meruba. So rather, the Mishnah must be talking about a prolonged Nazirus. I will say, now what's the definition of a prolonged Nazirus? Take a look. So, Elabalav Nazirus Meruba, Vekatani Maschil Umona Miyad. So we'll say, so take a look at Rashi for just a moment over here. Rashi says, Allah ben Nazirus Meruba, Vikar Maschil Umona Miyad, Me'osi Yom She'omid Bo. So we'll say, okay, in the case of Nazirus Meruba, now we'll say, what's the definition for our purposes of a Nazirus Meruba? What's the definition? The definition would be a term of Nazirus, where after he's finished with his saras, he has at least what? At least 30 more days. At least 30 more days. Now look at Rashi. Me'osim sha'omid bo, umashlim la'osin yomim lifnei chaluto, aval yemei chaluto miha ein olnimo. So also Rav Sharvia is highlighting is like this. The case of the Mishnah must be a case of at least 30, it must be more than 30 days. Must be more than 30 days. Because I will say, otherwise the Mishnah doesn't make sense. Because remember again, how does the Mishnah illustrate the law of the Nazir? Of the Nazir contracts saras. He says like the Mishnah like this. Ruvain is a Nazir, contracts saras. As a Metzora, we're going to see you actually have 3 potential periods of time as a Metzora. The first period, which we're not discussing right now, is the time where you have a blemish, but you're not sure if it's saras or not. We're not dealing with that right now. Right, we're focusing on 2 periods of time. You make Gomro and you make Sefiro. So you make Gomro are the days when you're actually a Metzora, right? Active saras, and then you make Sefiro, where you are counting the days of your purification process. That's really what we are hyper-focused on right now. So we'll say, so now watch this. What does our Mishnah say? Those days, you hit the pause button on your Nazirus, right? Go through the process. When that process is over, you could resume your Nazirus and count the rest of your Nazirus. Rav Sharvia demonstrates that it must be that we're talking about a Nazirus Meruba, where there's at least what? At least 30 more days left on your Nazirus. It has to be that way. Because you need a minimum of 30-day growth. It has to be that way. The most important Rav Sharvia says is, but what do you see from the Mishnah? Clear from the Mishnah that the days of Saras do not count towards the completion of the Neder Nazirus. So I will say, who does that contradict? That contradicts with Chisda. Because Rav Chisda said, when do we hit the pause button? It's only on a Nazirus Mu'atas, but on a Nazirus Meruba, we will go ahead and count the days of Tzaras as well. Rav Sharia successfully proves that what? That Allah L'maisa, the Mishnah is talking about a prolonged Nazirus, and yet still what? The days, a prolonged Nazirus, and yet still the days of Tzaras do not count towards your Neder Nazirus. So Rav Sharia successfully lodges a kasha on Rav Chisda, to which the Gemara says, "Who most of law?" So he raises the question, he answers it. So we'll say, could very well be, we're talking about what kind of case? Beniziros bas chamishim yom. We'll say, maybe the Mishnah is talking about the following case. Of a guy who was Nazir for 50 days. What are we talking about? Well, it's actually the way we illustrate the example. The Yosef Esrin, maybe the case is where he observed 20 days of his Naziros. This Yalda Beit Saras, and ultimately, again, he goes ahead and develops signs of Saras. Megalech Tzaraso. So I'll say in this case, the beauty of it is that what? Even if you pause the Neder Nazir, so I'll say what happens? V'hadar Yosef Tlosin Yomin de Nazir Daha Isle Gidul Seyar. So we'll say, could very well be that this is the case of the Mishnah. The case of the Mishnah could be a guy who's a Nazir for 50 days. And I will say, here's the beauty. What happens if you're a Nazir for 50 days? Right? So again, 20 days in, you develop Tzaras. Hit the pause button, go through your process of Tzaras, and then when you hit resume, what happens? I will say, you have 30 more days. Take a quick look at the Rush for just a moment. V'hadar Yosef lamed yom, lahashlim niziruso, taha isle gidol seir, ulekach dinhu, shelo yistar hakodmin, v'gam ein ololo debay gidol seir. So I will say, the Gemara says it's like this. It could very well be that this is the case of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is illustrating a very specific case, of where what? Of where Tzaras does not deconstruct what you've observed up until this point in time, but also allows you to still have 30-day minimal growth. So I will say, if you have this particular type of case of a 15-day Nazirus, and you become Matzorah 20 days in, that's a case where everyone will agree that what? The days of your Tzaras will not count towards your Neder Nazirus. Why? Because since you have exactly 30 days left, and since 30 is what? The minimum number of days you need anyway, that's a case where everyone will agree that the days of your Tzaras do not count towards your Nazirus. However, perhaps what Rav Chisda is driving at, look at the Rosh, Aval, Benazir Meruba, Kigon Shenadar Peyo, Ulusov Chavyo, Nisnaga, Benitar Begilach, Usof Lamid, Minigo, Misalik Salgile, Kevan Shidisham Naziruso, Kidei Gidol Ser. Well, upon someone say, Rav Chisda says like this. Rav Chisda will say, I agree. If all you have is a 50-day Nazirus, and you develop Tzaras 20 days in, Tzaras says, hit the pause button on the Nazirus, and again, the days of Tzaras will not count towards your Nazirus. Why? Because Lamaisa, again, you're going to need a minimum of 30 days anyway, after you finish with your Tzaras. I will say, what is Rav Chisda coming to add? Rav Chisda, I'm talking about a case like this. I will say, imagine the following situation. Imagine you took on a Nazir Nazirus for 80 days. I'm a Nazir for 80 days. You could do that. I will say, now watch this. Now you go ahead and you contract Tzaras 20 days in. So we'll say, so now remember again, when that whole Tzaras process is finished, how many days do you have left? 60. Rav Chisda would say, excellent by the way, excellent, right? Rav Chisda would say, in that case, I hold that Tzaras, the days of Tzaras, could count towards the Neder Nazirus. Why, Rabbi was saying? Why? Because since on the back end of the Nazirus, you already have more than enough days to cross the minimum threshold, he holds in that situation the days of Tzaras could count as well. So we'll say, isn't that fascinating? So we'll say, what we have over here is as follows. Obviously, in a case of Nazirus Mo'etas, of a 30-day Nazirus, and you contract Tzaras somewhere in the middle, everyone will agree that, of course, again, see, I will say, that case is not really going to be a very helpful case. Why not? Because Lamaisa, since you're doing a shaving for Tzaras in the middle of the Neder Nazirus, even though, again, we're not going to make you lose the days that you've observed up until that point, it's somewhat immaterial. Why? Because after you conclude your Tzaras, by definition, you have to observe 30 days because you need 30 days of hair growth. So that's not really the case in question. The case in question is Nazirus Meruba. When you have more, and I will say it really turns out when you have a longer neder nazirus. So when you have a longer neder nazirus, Rabbi say where on the back end of this, when I say the back end of this is, after you complete your tzaras process, you have more than 30 days anyway left. Can you count the days of tzaras as part of the tally or not? This is where Rav Chisda is saying, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Since anyway on the back end, you have more than enough to satisfy the 30-day threshold, I hold that halacha l'maisa, you can go ahead and count the days of tzaras towards your naziros as well. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, fine, good, we just said, good. We'll say second to last line from the bottom. We'll say, let's go a little bit weiter. We'll say, here the Gemara is going to introduce an incredibly difficult case, which we are not going to get into the specifics now, because we're actually going to do this sugi a little bit later on. Masiv Rami Bar Chama. So we'll say, listen to this case. Nazir, shahaya tamei b'safek umuchlat. So we'll say, umuchlat b'safek. So we'll say, right, tamei b'safek umuchlat b'safek. So I'll say now, look at the Rush for just a moment. I just want to show you the beginning of the Rush. The Rush says, Safek im nitma b'meis. So here's the guy, right? He's a Nazir. Kom Ruven. Ruven is a Nazir. Then what happens? There's a Safek im nitma b'meis. We're not sure, did he come in contact with the corpse? V'safek im hu mitzora muchlat. There's also a Safek if he's an actual mitzora. Bad day. Really bad day. Right? So I'll say, so again, this guy, the one thing we know for sure is, he's a Nazir. And we'll say, two sfekas he has now devolved upon him. Safek if he came in contact with a corpse, and Safek if he is a mitzora muchlat, a definitive mitzora. Now, how exactly you have a Safek if you're a definitive mitzora is a different. I guess we'll say, we're not going to get into the specifics over here, because I just want to get you to the bottom line of this. But here's the case. So we'll say, top of Nun Vav, Ochel bekatshim la'achar shishim yom, v'shosi yayin m'tamel l'meisim la'achar mea ve'esen yom. So we'll say, when you go through all the different stakes and all the different possibilities, it turns out he can only eat kachim after 60 days and drink wine and become Tamil Ayid and Eden Nazirus is over after 120 days. That's when you balance all the different stakes. The Tani Allah, and what we said about this, when is this true? Benazirus mu'etas. That's only true if you undertook a 30-day Nazirus. Aval benazirus bas shana. But for example, what happens if you undertook a Nazirus for a year? In that case, Rabbi said, listen to this. Ochel kachim li'achar shtei shanim. He can only eat consecrated items after 2 years. And he can only become Tamil Mesim, in other words, his Nazirus is only over after 4 years. Then I will say, why is all of this important for us? And if you assume that the days of Tzaras should count towards the tally of the Nazirus, then the Gemara says it should shorten everything. So the Gemara says, Tiskile b'shalosh shanim ushloshim yom. Ultimately, again, it should be enough if he observes 3 years, right? Ultimately, again, and then 30 days. So I will say, again, like I said, we're not getting into the specifics of that. The point that the Gemara is highlighting over here is, Rav Chisda, you seem to be wrong. So I will say, we're going to stop over here today in the Gemara, in the Sugya. We're going to do a little bit of Shara B'Tachlan, which is going to be incredible and beautiful and excellent. So I just want to point out what we're leaving off with. Right? So I will say, ultimately, again, we're leaving off with, at the end of the day, what? We're leaving off with halacha l'maisa Rav Chisda, right? The position of Rav Chisda, and Rav Chisda's position ultimately again is that halacha l'maisa, when you have an extended nazirus, extended nazirus, the days of your tzaras ultimately go ahead and count towards. The Mishnah teaches me that tzaras does not shter, right? Tzaras does not deconstruct that which you've observed up until this point. The point that Rav Chisda is trying to introduce us to is that tzaras halacha l'maisa goes ahead and can actually count towards nazirus when it is a nazirus meruba, when it is an extended nazirus. And I will say whether or not that is true, whether or not passing that halacha l'maisa, Emirat Hashem, we will say. I will say again, we're going to see that the sugya that we just did over here is actually sugya on Muntes on 59b. So we're going to see that sugya. We'll give it its due time over here. Here it's really just being brought up mamish as just a contradiction to Rav Chisda. We'll say answer resolution tomorrow. Shkoya. Okay. We'll say let's go weiter. A little bit in Shara B'Tachon.